Morning service celebrates mothers, and we celebrate an ideal which maybe not always is experienced in practice. And so let us begin with these words from Leah Ongiri, The Complexities of Motherhood. On Mother's Day, let us mark how beautiful and complex it can be for mothers and to be mothered. To those who have mothered, we thank you. To those who rejoice in the work, the role, the presence of mothering and mothers, we celebrate you. To those who are in the thick of parenting children of any age, we appreciate you. To those who have experienced loss through infertility, miscarriage, adoption, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve with you. To those who have endured abuse at the hands of their mothers, we acknowledge you. To those who are experiencing pain at the marking of this day, we witness you. To those who are single moms, grandmoms, stepmoms, foster moms, adoptive moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. May we reflect with gratitude on the wide spectrum of mothering that happens in our lives and in our communities.
So much for the opportunity today to speak of my mother. She was the blessed spirit of my life. We literally owe our mothers everything. The fact is, my mother would never let me forget that. Seriously, I would like to tell you about how my mother, June Barcroft Prowl, influenced my spiritual growth and my presence here today at Live Oak. Allow me to take you on a sentimental journey with a few whistle stops along the way. Perhaps while you're on this journey, you will remember your mothers and the special things that they did for you. My mother was a beautiful woman, tall and attractive with dark eyes and wavy hair. I remember standing beside her in the original small Methodist church in downtown Atwater in the 1950s, before the new one was built that Jim McMath remembers, singing hymns and looking up at this beautiful woman, listening to her voice. I still appreciate those hymns, the old songs that I consume as spiritual comfort food. She encouraged me to join the choir at Merced College. My father might have caused me to come here, but it was because of my mother that I'm in the choir. Henry Ward Beecher said, "The mother's heart is the child's schoolroom." My mother loved children and babies. Leaving East Los Angeles after meeting and marrying after the war, my parents had, after moving around California a while, my dad went to UC Berkeley, they finally bought a property out in the country 3 miles from the little town of Atwater in Merced County. They had 3 children in 5 years. During those days, my mother was at home with us. From those days, I remember playing outside in the yard and the orchards with my siblings. I remember our dog, the green of the grass, the white clouds above, and the subtle scent of almond trees, all in bloom in the springtime. Growing up out there gave me a lifelong appreciation of nature. Mom told me more than once that she had planned to marry a man, have children, and be a housewife. That was the typical ideal plan for a woman of those days, but it was not to be. Mom had graduated from Montebello High School during World War II. The war accelerated many college programs, so she started at USC the week following graduation from Montebello High School. Her goal was to become an RN and obtain a bachelor's degree, which she accomplished in 1949, graduating from USC and the California Hospital School of Nursing. Years later, after her death, reading her diary of that year of nurses training, I learned just how hard it had been. In those days, the medical field was dominated by male doctors who depended on an army of nurses to care for patients. Nursing was a low-paid, back-breaking profession. By the way, never upset a pediatric nurse. They have very little patience. A pivotal moment of empowerment arrived when Mom was asked to create and teach a licensed vocational nursing program at the newly formed Merced Community College. Merced was a growing community and more nurses were needed. She organized a program at the college, which started off with classrooms at the Merced Fairgrounds in the early 60s. And by the way, she told me that she never felt that she was qualified to do this. The arrival of a fourth surprise child, my youngest sister Laura, did not deter her. In the photo I recently discovered, there she is, wearing a professional hairdo and driving a Merced College station wagon. Remember those old station wagons? They would fit 4 kids and 2 of us had to face backwards in the back seat, getting car sick. In those days, nursing was considered to be almost a sacred vocation, and nurses wore starched uniforms, white hose, and starched caps with a black ribbon to indicate the receipt of a nursing degree. In the early years of the program, she got me involved in helping her prepare for the beautiful capping ceremonies for students who had finished their first semesters. We would lower the lights in the auditorium and light candles after the students would receive their nursing caps. When we light our chalice at each service, I think of my mother. In 1972, Mom went through one of the most difficult periods of her life. She was diagnosed with premenopausal breast cancer and had a radical mastectomy. Having just gone through a painful recovery from surgery, the following year, my parents divorced. Our family home and the Allman property in Atwater were sold, and she moved to Merced to a tract house near the college. Everything that we had all worked for on the ranch and all I had known of my childhood home was gone. This was also the year that I was to go away to the university in Santa Cruz. After a perfectly awful summer, I was glad to leave. I would like to say that I was supportive of her at this time, but I was a rather selfish teenager, busy establishing my independence and not particularly sympathetic to her situation. Much to my mother's credit, in spite of us not being able to help each other emotionally, she pulled together the broken pieces and persevered once more. Ever self-sacrificing, she worked and cared for my aging grandparents while continuing her directorship of the LVN program at Merced College. As director of the program, she and her team of instructors trained over 500 nurses during her 20 years of tenure there. Many of them were people of color, mostly women striving to improve themselves and their circumstances with the opportunity of a career in nursing. She was my model for a sense of social justice and the possibility of helping others through education. Upon retirement, many of her colleagues and former students, along with my grandmother and all her children, attended her retirement party to thank her for all of her years of dedication. And you know, they told a lot of silly jokes like, so June was trying to give me a shot in the hospital, and I was out there just running around trying to hide from her. But hospital security kept finding me in the ICU. It wasn't too many years before both my grandparents passed and my sister Laura called her to ask if she would move up to Davis to help care for her granddaughters while she was working. And so she did, of course. But she made sure to travel in summer during her retirement years, forming friendships with traveling buddies, playing bridge and making many memories on her cruises. She instilled in me a love of travel and adventure. If you can believe it, my mother got new cases of cancer twice more. Still, the treatments worked, though the side effects were significant, and I was amazed at how good she looked at her 90th birthday. And I want to celebrate 90th birthday. One of our choir members here, Penny, just celebrated a great one with her family. We all got together once more on that occasion to celebrate in Davis, but of course, our story, our journey, had to end someday. I spent the last day of my mother's long life at her bedside 2 years ago, a few days after she had taken a bad fall at her assisted care home. She was almost 95 years old, and I was alone with her then. Near the end of the bed, placed where she could see it, was a photo of her new great-granddaughter, Wendy, whom, unfortunately, she never got to meet, having fallen ill around the time that she was born. And she would also be thrilled that there's another grandchild on the way, going to be born in, a little boy going to be born in July. The torch was now to be passed on to the next generation. As hard as it was to see her go, it was so important to me that I would be there on the last day of her life, as she had been on the first day of mine. At her memorial, we gathered once again at Davis to celebrate her amazing life and to speak about the things that she had done for us. How grateful we were that she had been our mother.
June 7th, 1982, and I'm at work at Donlan School in Dublin, California, where I am a speech and language specialist. When my phone rings, I hear Kurt's voice. He stayed home sick today, and he says, "We just got a call from a nurse in a doctor's office in Fremont. A young Japanese woman came in labor, and the nurse wants to know if we want the baby." "What did you say?" I yell. I said yes. Oh my God. And that phone call was the beginning of the end of our long journey toward parenthood. We'd been through so much: surgery on my fallopian tubes, Clomid to regulate my cycle, sex by the thermometer, and months of Kurt handing me cups of sperm to rush up to the Kaiser fertility doctor. IVF was not yet widely available, but adoption seemed like a viable option. So I mailed out 1,000 letters with our picture and a description of ourselves to OBGYN doctors all over NorCal. And within 6 weeks, that blessed nurse picked us as our son's future parents. Right away, we called Philip, our adoption lawyer, who got on the phone to interview Kathleen, our baby's mama, even though she's barely out of the delivery room. Philip reports back, baby boy in perfect health, 8 pounds, 4 ounces, 21 inches, healthy families, no drugs, Japanese mother, and Caucasian father. But will Kathleen really give us this perfect child? We don't own a crib or bottles or diapers, because when you are infertile, you just expect disappointment. I rush out and buy a book. What shall we name the baby? The next day, we go to the hospital just 30 minutes from our Livermore home to visit and bring flowers. First, we meet Kathleen and her parents. Kathleen's dad and Kurt work for the same parent company, and they hit it off. Suddenly, a nurse comes into the room and asks Kathleen, "Do you want to circumcise the baby?" And she says, "It's up to them. They will be his parents." Now I can believe that it's really true. We are going to be parents. Next, we visit the nursery and we see our Brian for the first time. He looks like Kathleen and is beautiful. The next day, we meet up again at the hospital to bring Brian home. We have borrowed a car seat and we stop at the drugstore for bottles, formula, and diapers. And we made a bed and a laundry basket. We are ready. Ha! I am going to my evening class on language development that night, and I announce, I'm a mom. This is a surprise, since my students have not seen me pregnant, but they are thrilled. And now I will have chances to experience firsthand what I have been teaching them all semester. My adoption story is a bit unusual, to be offered a baby and then bring him home in 2 days. But it is not unique in this. A birth mother decides to trust complete strangers with the care and raising of her precious child. Also, we share with other adoptive parents the fear that the baby's birth mother will change her mind in the months before an adoption is final. Kathleen did not choose to keep in touch with us, except to ask for a picture, the one you see on the screen. But we think of her with love and gratitude every year on Brian's birthday, June 7th. Many of you have met Brian, now age 42, and my 2 delightful grandchildren, Emmy and Ethan. Getting a baby turned out to be the easiest part of parenting. Like all families, natural and adopted, there were plenty of hiccups along the way. For example, from the age of about 3, Brian liked to take things that didn't belong to him. And we had several talks with store managers and Brian's little friend's parents. We made a rule that he couldn't bring anything home from preschool except tan bark. And every night we would empty his pockets of this treasure. About age 12, he lost his longed-for vacation to his best friend in Oregon when he stole $100 from Kurt's wallet. I hired a friend, a criminal lawyer, to explain to him that he could be charged as an adult and sent to prison for larceny. This lawyerly advice turned the tide, and I finally stopped worrying that Brian would end up in prison. Well, maybe except that time that we learned Brian was pirating and selling music CDs in high school. I joined our first UU fellowship in Redwood City to get support in Brian's ethical and moral development and spiritual development. I needed it. I needed that help. He came to see our UU fellowship as his second home. Now, even though he rarely comes to church, he is UU in his thinking and his kindness, his love for family and community. I feel really lucky to be his mom.